Good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday, 2 o'clock, Macro Talk 2. How's everybody doing? Better than me, I hope. I'm a little under the weather. Not sure why. I think probably just a little bit of overwork and long days. But yeah, the picnic last weekend was a big success. I know that a lot of you were here on Tuesday, so I won't go through everything. I am going to show you a couple of pictures, though. We had a great time. It was a great crowd, and I'm going to show you some photographs of the people that were there. I think everybody had a good time. Might be wrong about that, but this is the crew. Pretty flabbergasted that this many people came to a picnic in Peoria on short notice, but we had a really good time. Had a couple of nice meals together, talked a lot, and compared notes on photography and a whole bunch of other things. This is a great photograph taken by George right here using an IR camera. Very cool. He also took one of me, and I'm going to show it to you for the simple reason that it is the only picture I've ever seen of me that I actually liked. Well done, George. Yeah, it makes me look a little bit like a zombie, but not that bad looking a zombie, I don't think. Anyway, great shot, great weekend. We had a blast, and we are most definitely going to do this again. In fact, what I want to talk to you today about is kind of just clearing up some loose ends, some things that I've wanted to bring up and haven't had a chance to. Also tell you about some things that are coming up. Ask for your feedback on the picnic that we just had, whether you were here or not. You knew what we were getting up to and what was going on. So I'd like to hear about what you think would be a good format or a good location or a good way to handle the next one, which we're definitely going to have. So we're going to do a little bit of that too. If there's anything in particular that you want to hear discussed at upcoming live streams, this is a good time to talk about that too. And also, any questions you have, including questions about the filter thread size on your Rodenstock enlarger lens, that kind of thing. If anybody has a question like that, throw that out there as well, and we'll deal with that as well today. So any questions you have about anything, pertinent or not, we'll deal with them. So let me see. There were a couple of questions. I don't know what the filter size of that a particular enlarger lens is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 40.5 millimeters. The best thing to do if you don't have a caliper to measure it with is try your other filters until you find one that fits. If you don't find one that fits, it's probably 40.5, or just sit around for a few minutes until somebody who has one of those will show up and tell you. In fact, there are probably already several people here who already have one. Will, let me see. I bet Crispy B can tell you the size of that filter thread. But anyway, let me tell you about a couple of things that are coming up. In fact, one thing in particular this weekend that's a really big deal and something I'm very excited about. We are doing our regular every other week per Zoom. A per Zoom is a Patreon Zoom meeting. It's like a live stream, only you get to talk back to me. We actually communicate, and it's 2 hours long. Happens every other Saturday, and I don't know of any other macro photographer. Actually, I don't know of any other YouTuber who offers this to their supporters, but that's what I do, and it's a pretty useful thing to have. We get together, we talk about macro photography, but we talk about anything else you want to as well. And generally speaking, we have a a pretty significant critical mass of clever people there. So we can get a lot of questions answered. We talk about a lot of advanced stuff as well as a lot of beginner stuff. This particular weekend is going to be special because I'm going to take the whole 2 hours and I'm going to split it up between two of the most exciting macro photographers in our midst. Klaus Gilloy, who is an extraordinary outdoor photographer, a wildlife macro photographer, who has developed a technique all of his own for high-speed, handheld focus stacking that you won't believe until you see it. He is taking some of the most amazing photographs with this new technique he's developed. And he's going to be telling us all about it tomorrow. The first hour of our per Zoom meeting from 10 until 11 will be dedicated to the new Gilloy technique, the technique that I myself have adopted. So impressed am I with it. In the second hour, from 11 until noon, I'm going to be turning things over to one of your bouncers today, actually. Bud Parrott, who's another extraordinary macro photographer who does most of his work in the studio, has developed some new lighting techniques to go along with some fairly exotic lenses that he uses to take pictures with such clarity and resolution that you'll be equally stunned to see them as you will when you look at Klaus's outdoor pictures. It's worth, I think, giving him a full hour to walk us through his setup and show us how he prepares specimens. And yeah, I think that if you are a Patreon member, a Patreon subscriber, then you really, really ought to come. Even if you don't come to these things normally, I think tomorrow is going to be a wonderful learning opportunity for all of us. If you are not a Patreon member, then unfortunately you don't get to come. That's not me being mean. It's just that's a bonus that I give to the folks that pay my salary. If you would like to pay a little bit of my salary, such as it is, you can join Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/Alan Walls Photography. Almost forgot it, but if you go over there, they'll be happy to take your money. And yeah, for the whatever the minimum amount is, you join for that, and then you can get into these per Zoom meetings and all the other stuff that we do. So that's coming up this weekend, and definitely something that you're going to want to participate in. I have been asked to post that picture, and I will when I get to it. I've been rather busy kind of cleaning up projects that have been overdue. But I will post that picture of the group, and I'll let you know who the folks are so that you can talk to them about it if you wish, or you can just know who they are. That's good too, and that will be posted on my website as part of. I may end up not actually doing a blog post for this week, seeing as it's now 4 days overdue. I may just do a bigger blog post for next week and include all of that in there. Those of you who have sent me photographs from the picnic, which is everybody so far, I have not yet had a chance to go through all of them. I've gone through many of them, but there are a lot of pictures to go through, and I'm going to be putting those into the article and probably into a video as well to tell you all about the picnic. Got some video footage as well that we'll put in there. Different subject altogether. Has anybody not seen the Lester Lefkowitz interview yet? It's worth watching. It's long, and Lester is a character like you wouldn't believe. But I think it's a fun video, and it's very different than the second interview. I say that not having done the second interview yet, but we're going to be focusing mostly on the contents of his second volume of his book. We were talking mostly about volume 1 and about his history as a photographer in the first interview, but in the second interview we're going to be talking about the advanced techniques he talks about in volume 2. And there are going to be some areas that we don't agree on in that. So I think we'll probably have some interesting discussion. Less me just being wowed by Lester's career, and more talking about how we take pictures. Okay, one of the things that while I'm waiting on questions, and now is a time to ask questions. Let me remind you. Let me see if there are any real quick, and then I'll move on. David Brown lost his Raynox 250. David, I'll ask everybody to look around and see if you see Raynox 250 lying around in your studio. It might be David's. Be sure to let him know and give it back to him. You were using a Raynox somewhere in Maine. That's big. That's a big area. Narrow it down for us, and we'll see if there's anybody in that neck of the woods. We could also have a whip round and get you another one. They're not too expensive. I think they're still $70, aren't they, for a 250? Something like that. Not too bad. Will Johnson. Will, you came last week, I believe, and I didn't get to say hi to you, but welcome. I'm glad you're here, and you're doing just the right thing, asking questions. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the definitive. You know what? I could look it up for you. You'll find the specs on Rodenstock's website, I'm pretty sure. I better not look it up. There's nothing worse than watching somebody do stuff on the computer when you can't see what they're doing. But I tell you what, if nobody gives you the answer by the end of this, I'll look it up and contact you with the size. It's a good lens, by the way, and reversing it on some extension is going to give you some nice sharp pictures. Let me see. I noticed somebody used the words, where was it? Sweet thang, and I almost thought that was a request for the song, but then I read the rest of it and I decided it wasn't, so I didn't put it on, but I almost did. I had it ready to go. So let me see. I'm going to say hi to folks as soon as I have said to Crispy B. I did not get your email yet. That is because I just have been drowning in work, but I will get to it today. I've made a note, like I did on Tuesday, but this time I'll get to it. I have a meeting today at 3:30, but after that I will be taking care of that, so I will respond to you then. I appreciate you getting back to me. Several people have asked, by the way, about the whole Fujifilm thing that we talked about 2 weeks ago. I want to clarify and explain, because I know some of you are laboring under the impression that that's still a thing. I was in the process of preparing a project that I was going to present as part of the Fujifilm GFX Challenge. This is a thing they put on every year to attract photographers to come up with a project that would use the GFX system, and in exchange for that, Fuji would lend you a GFX camera to do the project, and you would create content about your project for Fuji. Well, I went through the process of preparing a pretty impressive, I thought, proposal for a project that involved helping people to understand how to best use large format equipment for macro photography. We were going to push a few envelopes and use a few specific lenses, and this is one of them that Crispy B's talking to me about. Using these lenses to get full coverage of the medium format frame, and it really is a very interesting project and something I very much want to do. But when I looked at the hard, cold facts, the project was going to cost me about 10 times more than the award would have been if I had won it. So yeah, it would have ended up being a very expensive project to do, and there wouldn't have been an upside for the channel, and it would have impacted greatly what I could do with you. So I'm still interested in doing it, and I'm looking at other avenues of getting it funded separately, so that I can do the whole project the way I had it laid out, but do it in a way that would benefit the channel, so that I'd be producing content that would be useful to you rather than content that would just be useful to Fuji, basically, who are trying to sell GFX cameras. So this isn't going to be as we had it laid out originally, but I'm still interested in doing the project. So if I can figure out a way to do it, to get the equipment that I need, then we will do it. Several people have come forward and very generously offered to give me loan of several of the lenses that I was looking for, and that would be fantastic. And if I'm going to send a proposal to Fuji anyway, as a completely different kind of proposal, and see if they're interested in working with me. And if they are, then maybe that would take care of the camera too. So just bear in mind that for right now, medium format is going to be on hold until that all gets itself sorted out. I want to thank Graham for all his hard work. This is a behind-the-scenes thing, but you guys know that I work on microscopes for people who are interested in building a high-precision focus block for their macro rig. People who are using 20 and 40 and 60 and 100 times magnification want something more precise and with shorter step intervals than you can get with a commercial rail. And what I'm doing is modifying microscope focus blocks for that purpose. Well, I have had a bad run of luck in the last month. I've had 3 microscopes that were sent to me with bad focus blocks, with broken gears in the focus blocks, which means you can't use them for that. And Graham took it upon himself to make gears with his 3D printer. My 3D printer won't do it, but he has successfully replicated the gears in this very precise mechanism of the Olympus BH2 focus block. And I just wanted to thank him for all of his hard work. I know he's figured out even how to get the axle into these things, and that's just it's been many hours of labor. But this is going to mean that at least for some degree of precision, we're going to be able to continue to use focus blocks even when they're delivered to me in a broken state. It'll give me a chance to fix them. So we'll have to see how they test out and see if they're as accurate. But fortunately, the last 3 microscopes I got are good. So we've had 3 bad ones and 3 good ones. But thank you to Graham for that. And thank you, Graham, for sending me your portulaca seeds. I forget the name of the plant again. Anyway, these are gorgeous seeds to photograph. And in fact, it's receiving the seeds that he sent me that is motivating me to get my rig built this afternoon. I am building a temporary rig. I've told you 10 times I wasn't going to do that. I was just going to build the rig around what I needed for the Fujifilm project. Now, as that's not a thing, I'm going to build a temporary setup today so that I can start taking pictures again, because I'm going crazy not taking pictures. I have these seeds. I have all of the lovely insects that Alan Rechtenwald and George brought to me from far-flung places. These all need to be photographed, and to do that I need a rig, so that's what I'm doing today. Questions while I don't see any right now. Let me see if anybody's answered Will's question. I bet, let me see, somebody's talking about C. C's 25 millimeters, right? It's bigger than that. Yeah, I did get it, Crispy. I did get the email. I just found it, and will respond. You couldn't find it? Okay. I think that we won't have a problem. We won't have a problem finding it. 40.5 is my guess. We'll leave it there. Yeah, Telegram. Bud saying, yeah, open Telegram. I did. All right. Good. Sorry about that. I was trying to get all my electronic ducks in a row. So this week, one of the things I want to talk about is field photography and how we mess things up. I got back from our outing at the weekend and downloaded all the images from my one of my cards. Fortunately, I had 2 cards and I changed them out midway, but the first card was full of some of the most awful photographs, and for the life of me I couldn't figure out what was going on, but I finally figured it out, and it made me realize that there's a common pitfall in macro photography, especially if you're doing field macro, we're talking about now, that trips us up more than you'd think. And because today's cameras are so advanced that oftentimes it takes a fair amount of work to figure out what we've done wrong. Have you ever gone out and been out in the field taking pictures to your heart's content, only to realize at some point that you had something set up wrong and you didn't realize it? You just kept taking pictures. This happens amazingly frequently, and it can be the most ridiculously simple things. But I'm going to run through a few of them because they're issues that came up for me. I've done basically all of these in the past, and sometimes, like this weekend, where I was distracted and I had a lot of people I was talking to and focusing more on their stuff, their pictures, than I was on my own. I just didn't notice what was going on. I've spoken to a couple of other people that because they were in a slightly more pressured environment, being in a group of photographers out taking pictures, that they maybe didn't check as carefully as they could have done before they started, and had a few settings that resulted in some wonky pictures. But what are they? Well, probably the most common and most disconcerting is one of the simplest ones. And that is setting the diopter on your camera. If you're like me and you wear glasses only for reading, when I use my camera, my glasses are off, or they're way down on my nose and my eye is to the eyepiece. If you were to set your diopter. That's the little button on the side of the eyepiece that corrects for any vision issues that you have in nearsightedness. If you can't read stuff like me, this will turn your camera into a pair of reading glasses, and you can get it just where you like it. That way you'll know you're in focus when you take the picture. But if you happen to do that with your glasses on, and then take your glasses off, or similarly, if you do it with your glasses off and then start taking pictures with your glasses on, your focus will be all over the place, assuming you're using manual focus, of course. It won't be anywhere close to in focus, because you're looking at the world now through 2 reading glasses instead of 1. Done it all the time, but the trick there is if you shoot without your glasses on, then never shoot with them on, and vice versa. It's just a very easy mistake to make. And once you do, if you don't look at the back of the camera, like I generally don't do a whole lot of checking on pictures after I take them, I just keep taking pictures, then you might not know till later. One of the other problems that I see a lot is people will turn on bracketing. Usually of the exposure type. An exposure bracket, if you're not familiar, is a function that many modern cameras have, where when you take a series of pictures, usually in burst mode, it will take 3 or 5 or 7 images, and depending on the total stretch of exposure that you put in there, it will take them at different exposures. It'll take 5 pictures at different exposures. When you put them together, you can then create an image that captures all of that dynamic range, because you usually start with a very bright picture and it gets darker and darker as the aperture closes. So you're capturing all of the detail at one end of the histogram, all of the detail from the other, and you're bringing all of the 5 or 7 photographs together into one high dynamic range image. If you, for some reason, are out there shooting HDR type shots and you have bracketing turned on, especially in a Nikon, where the control for it is right up there on the top and it's an exposed button. But if you're doing that and then you forget about it and go to take individual photographs, you won't know that you're still bracketing. And what you'll see if you look at the camera is that your pictures are all over the place exposure wise. That you take a picture and the exposure is way overexposed. What's that all about? Take another picture, oh, that looks better, that looks about right. Then take a third one and it's crazy dark. If you don't know that you have bracketing turned on, you will start fiddling around with the ISO and the shutter speed. Every time you take a picture that is not what you expect, you start changing other settings, and before long it really becomes a tangled mess. So if you are using bracketing, I strongly recommend that you turn it off when you reach the end of your bracketing. Don't wait till the next time you pick up the camera, because you'll forget about it. I have done this a bunch of times. Program modes. You're probably shooting in manual, but every now and again I'll go out and I will switch to a program mode. Oftentimes I'll switch to shutter priority, meaning if I'm shooting birds, flying birds, I want my shutter speed to remain whatever I set it at, and I'll let the camera set my other settings, my aperture and my ISO. I'll leave that up to the camera so long as it doesn't touch my shutter speed, because I need to catch these wings doing their flying thing. If you accidentally leave that in place, then it can create all kinds of problems with the camera not knowing what you're trying to do, and adjusting your aperture or your ISO behind your back, so to speak. So I would make absolutely sure you're in manual mode. Now, one exception to that is to use manual mode and auto ISO. It is actually one of the only auto things that the camera offers that I use fairly regularly. I am so amazed by the kind of ISOs you can get good pictures with on the Nikon Z8, as I was with the 850 as well, that I trust the camera. I'll set a maximum ISO and it will be quite high because I've seen pictures with 1600 ISO that are just absolutely fantastic. So I'll let it get pretty out there before I'll stop the ISO from correcting for me. But if you leave it in auto ISO, it leaves you the freedom to set the shutter speed and the aperture that you want, knowing that within a certain range the camera is going to use the ISO to correct your exposure. It's a good way to avoid bad exposures if you're changing your settings an awful lot. So that's one to bear in mind. One that I was just unaware of, that a friend of mine had to deal with this last week. When you have a video setting, if you do occasionally use video and you're in the video menu and you set HLG, which is hybrid log gamma, it's a high dynamic range for video setting. I didn't realize it, but that setting can actually bleed over into your stills setting when you put the camera back into stills mode from video mode. I had to talk to Nikon about this to figure out exactly how that could happen, but it apparently can happen, and it can result in some very unpredictable exposure events on your camera that just don't seem to make any sense. Also, if you shoot JPEGs and somehow you set your camera, and again this is I think predominantly for Nikons, if you set your camera to record HEIF, which is a compressed format similar to JPEGs, that automatically enables HLG. And if HLG is enabled on your camera for any reason, that can cause these exposure things that don't make any sense. So be mindful of that. Use RAW or use JPEG, but I would avoid setting the HEIF unless you have a reason to. Let me see. Have you ever shot without a card? Don't say no. You've shot at least one or two shots without a card. Fortunately, Nikon will tell you that it's showing you just a preview, that you don't have a card in, so it can't record what you're taking. But I have, even at important things, I've done this. I've left the card out and taken a few pictures before I realized that, yeah, not a good idea. Sometimes some of the settings in the custom menu, the pencil menu for Nikon users, are strange, and that they can create problems. There are a lot of them, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are a couple that I've encountered. Probably one of the more common is exposure preview. This is for DSLR users. You may not be as familiar with this concept, but when you're using a mirrorless camera, the view that you're looking at through the viewfinder or on the back of the screen can either reflect your settings in the camera accurately. In other words, what you see is what you get. But if you turn that exposure preview off, what it'll do is it will brighten up the picture on the back of the screen or darken it down so that it's easier for you to see, which means what you're seeing is a modified version of what's going onto your memory card. So you definitely do not want to turn that off if you're using the viewfinder when you're out in the field. Exposure preview needs to be set to show you what your settings are. That's kind of one of the big benefits of using a mirrorless camera, is by having exposure preview on, you know that what you're looking at is what you're going to get, not some grossly darkened image because the viewfinder was making it easier for you to see the picture. Sometimes I use a lot of older lenses on newer cameras, and one of the issues, if you're using a lens that's, you know, from a different brand of camera, or it's truly ancient, then you know everything's manual on it and you're setting it manually, just like you would if it had an extension tube or if you were using it in reverse, no problem. But sometimes when you have a lens that's a little bit older than your camera, for example, a D lens on a newer DSLR or a mirrorless camera. In fact, just on the newer DSLRs in this case, they can actually give you full control of the lens, but you have to do a couple of things. You have to close the aperture down to 32, I think it is, the smallest aperture you can get, and lock it on the lens in order to turn over control of the lens to the camera. If you fail to do that, then the camera is going to just give you error messages as it tries to move the lens, but it can't because it's not locked in sync with the camera. If you do that, you'll know it though. You'll get error messages all over the place, but it's another thing to do. Let me see, what else did I... Yeah, classic one is having all the vibration control you can have on your camera and lens, and then sticking the lens on a tripod. That will not work. The way the vibration control in a camera works is similar to how it works on an anti-vibration table. The mechanism actually causes the lens mechanism to vibrate. It feeds it a vibratory signal so that it can then compensate for it with an equal and opposite action. And when it's doing that, it allows it to make subtle corrections for the actual vibration that you're trying to control. It's called, what's it called? Feed forward vibration, something like that. But if you are putting your camera on a stable mount where it is not moving at all, or it's not picking up any appreciable movement from the ground, then it's not going to know quite what it's supposed to do, and you get this vibration which causes motion blur. So having vibration control turned on when you have the camera in a fixed position, on a rail for example, or on a tripod, it can result in motion blur that doesn't make any sense. Well, now it should make perfect sense, but yeah, that's another thing that we do. I think that's most of them. If you are out shooting, especially if it's an important thing, it's a good idea to take some test shots at home before you put the camera in the bag, before you head out there. So if there is anything you need to tweak, you can do it, you know, without any big panicky rush. Once you get out in the field, that's a bad time to try to troubleshoot a complex camera problem, because there's too much to think of. There are too many controls that could be causing the problem. So it's a good idea to do that before you go out. But if all else fails, you can always do a reset. Now, most of the things that you're likely to have in effect that are going to mess up your picture taking are going to be in the shooting menu, and that's the icon with the little camera on it. It's the primary menu. It's the first menu item you get shown. You can reset all the settings in that just by itself, and that will usually fix most of the problems that we have made by mistake. Stuff we've left turned on that shouldn't have been turned on. That will put it back to a safe shooting mode. Failing that, really, about the only other thing that you can do is just do a factory reset of all the settings in the camera, and that messes up everything that you've ever put in there. So you would need to start over again and watch a video and set everything according to whoever you trust. These are all things that I've done. There are probably more. You've probably got some that you've done too. Let me know what your most embarrassing thing to do with the camera is. But the solution for me is to take a few test shots before I leave the house, make sure I've got a card in, make sure that I don't have any residual bracketing settings or anything else left over from a previous shoot. If I was shooting video earlier in the day, make sure that you turn the camera back to stills. That will affect things as well. So there you go. Let me see what kind of questions we've had coming in. And Rodenstock question was answered. 40.5 front filter size, which is what I guessed. Let me see. I am Graham mentioning the Portulaca seeds that I now have from the same batch that I sent you, perfectly fine and shiny. I suspect the US are irradiating the post again. Graham sent me these seeds after I saw one of his photographs that I'm sure everybody has now seen of one of these seeds. An absolutely breathtaking photograph. Just the colors and the shapes on these seeds is unbelievable. So I was oohing and eyeing, and Graham sent me some of these seeds, which are from the same batch that he shot. Mine, however, these are black and not pretty. Though about every 10th one has a nice surface on it. So I don't know what happened, and Graham is suggesting that maybe they radiated them on the way into the country, which is absolutely possible, I suppose. But I have planted some of, not these ones, some of the ones that I got earlier. And I was talking to Rick about it last night. He says that there are only specific strains that make these pretty seeds. So we'll find out. I planted some, and they haven't died yet. So hopefully they'll sprout and form some seed pods, and I can get some fresh seeds out of them. So that is my hope. If I do, this will be one of the first things I photograph with my new setup. What do you do when you are rebuilding your setup or making a major change? Where do you start? What is the first thing you do? Nobody coming forward with an answer. The first thing you need to do before you can start adding components and figuring out where things are going to go is you need to figure out what is your baseline. What is the rock bottom that you're going to be putting everything on, and then what priorities, what heights are going to set the heights of everything else. Obviously, if you use one rail that has a height of 30 millimeters, and you use one quick release plate, you use one of these, one of those, one of the others, it's going to have a certain height, and that height isn't going to change if you just have that one rail. If you use a bellows, your height is going to increase by 12 millimeters or thereabouts. So the first thing you need to do is decide what is the baseline, what is the optical center of your camera. And from there, you can start thinking about, well, if I'm going to have an optical center there, but I've got one of these enormous XYZ tables that's taller than that. Well, obviously, my optical center cannot be there. If I plan on using that as a positioning system, my optical center needs to be raised. And that's what I mean by decide where your floor is going to be. The second thing I need to do, is decide what my footprint is going to look like. You have a table, presumably optimized for vibration control. And on that table, you want to put one horizontal rig, two horizontal rigs, a rig that uses an idler platform like mine, or maybe you want to put a horizontal and a vertical rig on the same platform. You need to make sure before you start that your platform is big enough and configured correctly for that. Either long enough for you to add a vertical stand on the far end of the table, or wide enough that you can add it adjacent to the main one. The next thing you have to think about is, once you have set the base height, where your optical axis is going to be, in other words, then you can start thinking about your light supports. It is the most important part of your setup. You can have a perfectly flat, perfectly straight mount for your camera and for your subject, and you can have lovely backdrops that you can slot into holders. You can have all of that stuff and not take a single decent picture if your lights aren't in the right place. So depending on what kind of lights you're using, you'll need to build some kind of a scaffolding, some kind of a structure to hold those lights. Now, lots of people, Bud most notably, will mount his lights on the deck itself, which is great. He can move them around, he can put them at different heights, and that's fine. I use a lot of light from way up above, so I need an actual framework on which to mount the lights. But I cannot build that, I cannot design that until I know what my optical height is. In this particular build, even though this is a temporary build, I am going to set up my idler platform to ride on some extruded aluminum uprights, so that I have room to place underneath my drive assembly, my controller and my stepping rail. The reason is I want that out of the way, but in order to have all of that underneath my idler platform and still have an optical center that's not way too high, because the higher the optical center, the more vibration, I'm going to actually make a table that has a subflooring on it, so that I can put my drive assembly underneath the table, underneath the level of the table. And this is all stuff you need to decide before you start building, because once you start building it, you don't want to then have to cut a hole in your mount. Better to plan it from the beginning. One thing that I've been thinking about is putting a vertical platform on the horizontal platform. That's probably not a good idea. The floor down here is concrete, but it's prone to vibration as well. Having a tall tower on the same table as your horizontal rig is going to be problematic if there are vibrations, because the tower will vibrate with the floor and vibrate everything else on the table. I'm going to have to think about that and do some testing. I've talked to you before about using your phone with the physics package. What's it called, that physics app? It's the physics toolbox. Yeah, physics toolbox looks like that. It's free, I think, from the App Store. And this thing has a linear accelerometer that you can position on your rig, and if there's an earthquake, it'll show it. But if there's just a little bit of vibration, you'll see that too. And this is one of the best tools for setting up a rig that you'll ever find. You can set it to be as sensitive as you need it to be, and it will show teeny tiny vibrations. In this setting, it actually shows vibration when the dog upstairs walks through this upper hallway. That's up above. That's amazing that it would show that. Okay, so let me see. Questions. Using IBIS on a tripod can be a good idea. According to Crispy B, modern cameras know when they're on a tripod and won't cause the issues that happened in earlier stabilizer methods. Well, that's good to know. That is certainly not been my experience with the D850. But of course, I use older lenses on that. Yeah, that's good to know. I actually was researching this week how to build my own positive anti-vibration platform, an actual vibrating table that would counteract the vibrations of the floor. The reason being, I looked into the prices of optical tables, and they start in the thousands of dollars and go up from there. You can occasionally find them on the used market, but very rarely, and oftentimes it's just parts of the table, it's not the whole table, and you never know whether it's going to work or not. So I thought, well, I wonder if you could build one of these things. Presumably it just involves some kind of a motor and some feedback circuitry to sense the vibration and then correct the position. And I ended up reading a long paper on the whole concept of vibration correction, and yeah, it's crazy complicated, and I think that's the reason they published the paper, was so people wouldn't try to do it themselves. But I don't think that's going to be a practical solution. So I'll keep looking for an active dampening platform. There'll probably be one show up eventually. The thing is, when they do show up, they cost as much to ship as they do to buy. Yeah, maybe one of these auctions will have one for sale. If you know of anybody that's selling one, let me know, because I'm definitely in the market for one. I've wanted to have an active dampening system for many years, and yeah, this would be a good build to get one. All right, so I'll look into what Crispy B is saying. I mean, I'm sure that he's right, but I have, in fact, just this weekend, I was talking to one of the picnic attendees and a recent competition winner. And we were talking about that very thing, about camera image stabilization and some of the weird things it does when it's turned on. You get some jumping around of the image when the vibration control is on. That's very disconcerting. It's probably just the thing doing its job. But it is disconcerting. That was Tom I was talking about, by the way, who knows a lot about this kind of thing. Shouldn't you be able to find those in a store? What am I looking for in a store? Mounts, lenses. What else were we talking about? plants, seeds. I don't know. Tell me what it is I should have found in a store, and I'll tell you if you can find them. If you're talking about the seeds, I have no idea. I've never tried to buy seeds for anything. I don't have a good track record with growing stuff. So yeah, whatever it is, if you can find them in a store in Transylvania, then I dare say that Peoria will have a shop that has them as well. The Physics Toolbox app. Even my gentle footsteps on the carpet were picked up, says Nick. Frightened to even breathe when a run is underway. Yeah, you and me both. I mean, that's probably the most useful feature of having the Physics Toolbox on your phone, is once you realize how little it takes to set up vibration in your platform, that you're deathly afraid to do anything near the platform, and that's a good thing. It keeps you away from it and stops you from being complacent. So yeah, just knowing that you can tell. Let me see. I don't get why is vibration such an issue when the stacking software can handle stitching handheld stacks within reason, but they can compensate for that. Why not for any tiny vibration amount? Well, the vibration, it's two different things that you're comparing. The vibration control in our lens is an actual physical counteracting of motion in the lens. It's a mechanical movement of the lens to compensate for the movement. In stacking, the photographs that are examined by the stacking software are moved in order to put them where they would have been had they not been vibrating. What you're doing is in the first instance you're actually correcting for the physical movement of the camera. In the second, you're repositioning the photographs that have already been taken to align them properly so that they can stack. So they're two different things, and it also doesn't quite cover the whole problem of vibration, because not only does vibration result sometimes in the subject being in different places on the frame, but also there is actual motion such that when the aperture is when the shutter is open, the subject is moving, and that will cause blurring. And that's something that neither the stacking program nor the camera can fix. It's something that you have to fix by using a shorter shutter speed, faster shutter speed. See what I'm saying? Two different things. Yes, the stacking program does a fantastic job of correcting for position change, no doubt about it. Let me see. All right, Alan found some Portulaca seeds at Hobby Lobby for 26 cents. Are you kidding me? Have you looked at them yet? Are they any good? Yeah, let me know. Moss Rose, that's right. That's the name of them. That's the name of the things, as I was told. A week ago, I saw a homemade vibration reduction device for use with a microscope. It looked wonky, but might work, says David Brown. Yeah, a lot of people there's a whole world out there of people making these things for use with their record players, their turntables. And most of them, well, all of them are passive vibration controlled things, putting them on a block of concrete with some sorbethane underneath. All of that's good and well, and I have that, and I will use that if I don't get an active system. But an active system is something completely different. Heirloom seeds, says Alan. Yeah, but do they look good? under the microscope. I mean, are they going to be good for photographing? We've got a Hobby Lobby near here. I'm not sure I'm allowed in there, but I'll go check it out. Moss Rose. I need to write that down because Portulaca, I guess they might not know what that is. Michelle, wasn't talking about lenses compensating. I was talking about Zerine, etc. Handling handheld stacking, which moves far more than vibration would, but motion burbling and motion blur being an issue, I understand. It's all about the frequency, the amplitude of the vibration that you can control the high amplitude, the actual movement part. Fine, it's the short movements that cause the motion blur that you can't. Anyway, Alan, when you open those things, shoot me a message and tell me whether or not they're any good before I go down there. Let me see. Crispy B. I even had problems with vibrations and air currents when shooting moths with long hair or tiny bugs on long thin needles. Yep, absolutely. Vibrations are the bane of our existence. Doing everything you can to counteract vibration is key. It's just the whether or not we need an active anti-vibration solution like an optical table is probably overkill in most cases. I've taken a lot of very nice pictures without having an active system, but yeah, one of these days I'd like to get one just to be sure. Okay, let me see. What am I missing? Nothing. It's 3:01. It's time for me to get ready for my my next thingamajig this afternoon. Got an important meeting got to get to. So let me see. One simple way to test for vibrations is to set up a camera and set up focus with your highest magnification lens or objective, and then jump up and down. See if the image shows vibrations. Yep, that is definitely a quick and dirty way to do it. The reason I like using the toolbox is it will record the tracing. So I can put it on, set it to record, and then go walk around and come back and look at the recording and see, you know, what the effect was of my different activities. Let me see. William's here, as is Zeno. The crowd's all here. I had such a good time out taking pictures with these guys. It was something else. Forgot to reset white balance. Done that before. Leaving the lens cap on. I do that every time. My first 3 shots are always of the inside of a lens cap. Yep. So yeah, that's a good one. And there's the question about being able to find them in a shop in Transylvania. Still don't know what it is I'm looking for. But all we need for macro is a full frame mirrorless with 45 megapixels. Yep, all the bells and whistles included. Okay, I'm going to go, guys. I've got a million things to do. Sorry today was a little bit all over the place, but yeah, I wanted to cover all of this stuff, and we'll get back on a more program footing next week. Don't forget Pazoom this Saturday. If you can at all make it, you need to, because it will revolutionize the way you take pictures out in the field, I promise. Okay, take care, and thanks for coming. Have a good weekend.